Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Elected Podcast. And this is a particularly special episode because we are here live with an incredible panel of women, and we are doing this in collaboration with the Junior League of Boston, an organization of which I am very proud to be a member of. So to kick it off, I actually want to bring on my good friend and the Advocacy Director of the Junior League, Pamela Lynch, who is going to tell us a little bit about what we're doing here this week and why this episode is so special. So Pamela, welcome so much to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much, Meg, for having us here. I'm really excited. So as Meg said, I'm Pamela Lynch, and I'm the Advocacy Chair of Junior League of Boston. For those who aren't familiar with Junior League of Boston, we are all around improving the community through effective action of trained volunteers. And I'm actually a past president of Junior League of Boston, and Meg and I actually were on a service trip in Morocco together. So that's one of the volunteer areas we've both taken part of. And so today we're really excited for this event to be part of the Mass Civic Learning Week. And so today's event, as I said, is part of the Mass Civic Learning Week. There's over 45 programs and events all around the Commonwealth. And the Massachusetts Civic Learning Coalition is doing this in partnership with different schools, teachers, and nonprofits. And it's all for all ages, for everyone to really engage in some dialogue and think about how we can really kind of ignite some passion and envision everyone as change makers around democracy and really put that passion into action. So I guess a little more about the Mass Civic Learning Coalition. It's comprised of education, nonprofits, school districts, youth, engagement groups, research institutions, to provide resources, raise awareness, and advocate for effective civic education as a core component of every young person's educational journey in Massachusetts. So if you haven't already followed this organization, I suggest you follow them on social media, and hopefully you'll take part in more of their events.
And we are joined by the fabulous president of the Junior League of Boston, Kathleen. She says, hey to everybody. Thanks, Kathleen, for watching us live here. All right, I want to go ahead and kick this off and invite on our panelists. So no pressure here. I'm going to read their just incredibly impressive bios. And I want to start with Ariana. Let me find Ariana. There she is, Ariana Constant Patton. I'm going to bring her onto the feed. So Ariana is an 18-year-old Boston youth artist activist. She is currently a senior at Boston Collegiate Charter School and has recently committed to UMass Boston for a concentration in race, ethnicity, and literature, and a minor in human services. For the past 4 years, she has worked with teen empowerment, focusing on justice across Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan through their violence intervention and prevention programming, and civic engagement with the Boston Community Action Team, aka Gang Votes. She has spoken at the March for Our Lives Boston rally in 2017 against gun violence happening in her community, as well as interning with Suffolk County DA Rollins last January. You can find her art, which she centers around Black joy, at Dorchester Art Project, as well as getting it directly through her by DMing her on Instagram at ACONSTANTP. I spelled that out, so hopefully folks can find that. So Ariana, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, our next panelist that we're going to bring on is Brianna Bennett, and Brianna is a 22-year-old resident of Hull, Mass. She is currently a sustainability advisor for the Town of Cohasset's Alternative Energy Committee, the youth outreach officer for the Hull Democratic Town Committee, and a member of the League of Women Voters. She received her bachelor's degree in the spring of 2020 from Merrimack College with honors in environmental studies and sustainability, political science, and a minor in social justice. At this time, she was taking classes from the Harvard Extension School and hopes to get her master's degree in sustainability by 2022. Brianna was first motivated to work as a sustainability consultant in 2018 after attending the School for Ecological Justice's Eco Practicum in Liberty, New York. According to Brianna, the work she is doing every day is in pursuit of the goals she set during that practicum, and she wants to achieve a high quality of life for all people through wide-scale institutional sustainable development. So Brianna, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the podcast.
Yay. All right. Our next panelist to bring on is Layla. And Layla Mandel is a high school senior, an activist, and a budding filmmaker. Her films focus on climate change, related themes, and climate activism. She is a member of the Sunrise Movement and the co-founder of the local chapter in Watertown. Sunrise Watertown organized and led a pre-election wide awake strike, a 2021 Earth Day march, and advocated for the town council to pass a climate emergency resolution. The group has engaged in discussions with Senator Brownsberger, Representative Owens, and former Representative Hecht in order to bring in more legislation to Massachusetts aligned with the Green New Deal. Layla is also a co-founder of Uplift Watertown, an abolitionist youth-led organization whose work was instrumental in establishing a second social worker position embedded in the Watertown Police Department. She has also facilitated anti-racism trainings for over 150 young people, educators, and organizers. She is looking forward to continuing her activism on the Tufts campus this fall. Layla, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I think Lynn nailed it. These resumes are so impressive. I don't know about you, Pamela, but I already feel like I accomplished nothing compared to these incredible women. You are just all so amazing. So, all right, we've got two more incredible women with us. Our next is Tara. So Tara is a legislative and budget director for a Massachusetts state senator and member of Beacon BLOC. Prior to her role on Beacon Hill, Tara served as an Equal Justice Works Fellow at Greater Boston Legal Services, where she worked for a more equitable, accessible childcare system through direct representation, litigation, and policy work. Tara graduated from Georgetown Law in 2019. In law school, Tara represented kids and teens in the criminal legal system, interned for various legal aid organizations and nonprofits fighting for economic justice, housing for all, and gender equity, and researched healthcare infrastructure and anti-poverty programs. So Tara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. And you're right, this is such an accomplished group of people. I fear that I'm aging everyone.
Don't worry, I'm right there with you. Okay, don't feel bad at all. All right, and last but not least, we have Whitney Mooney. So Whitney is a two-time graduate of Southern New Hampshire University with a BA in Communications and an MS in Political Science. She is currently the Development and Marketing Manager at YWCA Cambridge, Mass., an organization on a mission to eliminate racism and empower women. She is also the Diversity Coordinator for the Wallingford Democratic Town Committee and is currently exploring a run for Town Council. So Whitney, welcome.
My mute game is not as good as I thought I was. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yay. Well, I am very excited. And as soon as I can get my tech to work over here, we are going to kick it off. So Pamela, I'm going to bring you back on the screen. I'm going to pull myself out for our very first question.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So yeah, listening to everyone's bios, this is such an impressive group. I'm just so honored and thrilled to have you all here. So when we came up with this turning passion into action, I was thinking about areas of passion for me, and actually, so I work at TPI Composites, and I'm all around, electrification, decarbonization. I'm a senior director kind of working in that space, renewable energy, and that's near and dear to my heart, as well as women in STEM. And I mean, there's such an accomplished group here, and so I'm really excited around this. So maybe we can go around in the order that each of you are introduced, and kind of what does turning passion into action mean to you, and how have you done that? Can you give us an example about how you've done that, since all of you have already kind of started turning your passion into action? Brianna, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I since I was young, I mean, I still am young, I guess. I have been an artist, and I've always loved to do art. That was a lot of the ways of how I expressed myself as a kid. And so that obviously became my passion, just being an artist and painting and taking pictures. I mainly work with photography and acrylic paints, and I genuinely loved it. And the one thing that I wanted to do was, once I found my passion for activism and working for my community and just really helping other people, I wanted to be able to combine the two. So what I've done is be able to still share my message of activism and at the same time do my art. So a lot of my pieces are centered around like that was shared in my bio. I focus on Black joy, but also I focus on what America needs to see, specifically white America, because a lot of the times Black and brown people are silenced, just to be silenced in America. There's no real justification behind it. And so art is something that everybody has in their homes for the most part. You might have, snag something cheap from the dollar store, but it's a cute little painting to hang on the wall, right? And that's something that I wanted my art to be. I wanted my art to be, one, affordable for my community, but also two, being able to be something that everybody is able to listen to. Obviously you look at art, but you read into it at one point or another. And for me, this has been a long journey, but being able to actually like give out my art, buy little things like stickers, and prints and things like that that people can hang in their homes, and lighters. I put my art on lighters because a lot of people need lighters. People need lighters to light candles and different things. I feel like that's such a common thing in our society, where it's just like something so small and so cheap. So I wanted things like that to be accessible to people, and at the same time have a message behind it. So that's how I turned my passion of art and activism, put them together and really put them out into action.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you were able to take two things you love and are passionate about and really bring those together. So that's incredible. Brianna, want to tell us about your journey?
Yeah. Well, so first, when I think of passion, I often think about how it's likened to, images of fire, just because it's burning, it's curious, it catches. I think passion can be obsessive or hard to control and sometimes unstoppable, just like fire. And so I think those same qualities are how you can kind of identify passion as such a powerful tool for someone to have. When you find something you're passionate about and you want to learn everything you can about it and fight for it, that's a really great thing. And so I think big changes come from people who are passionate. Turning passion into action for me means feeding the fire and letting it blaze. So educating myself, seeing if a spark catches for me, and then following through by talking to people, going to forums. I'd consider listening to a podcast like this one action if it's what you're interested in. There's certainly a lot more concrete actions that can be taken. So for me, right now, I'm working with a state representative on a piece of legislation that impacts youth voters. So I'm volunteering and reaching out, trying to get co-sponsors for the bill. And they're working on the legislation now. And so when you're working on legislation, you need co-sponsors and all sorts of different things. And I'm a big believer in top-down policy change. I've always enjoyed policy. It's what I've always studied, and I've purposely pursued policy classes, things like that. And I've written a lot of comment letters on environmental policies for the state of Massachusetts in the last couple of months, which anyone can do. And I've just learned that recently. There's public comment periods for legislation where you can tell people in charge exactly what you think of their bill and if they should change something before it becomes law. So I really love policy because I can see the changes it makes for people. And I think that it's what empowers people to change their own lives. And so I think policy can make things accessible for people, and it needs to address all people. And yeah, that's what I'm passionate about. So that's the work I've been doing.
That is awesome. Feed the fire and empower through policy. I love it. I wrote that down. That's great. Let's see, Layla.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a high school senior, and I think especially as high school students, it's like we're too young to do anything about these huge issues in the world. We feel like we're going to finish school, we're going to go to college, get a job, and then we'll try to make a difference. And I feel like this kind of creates a sense of complacency, because we're kids and we're teenagers, we don't really have any real power to do anything. When in fact, a lot of these issues are really dependent on time, and they're going to affect us the most. So I've always been really passionate about the environment, and animals especially, because my childhood was filled with camping. I love to swim and be in the water. I was part of Roots and Shoots and grounds crew in elementary school. And so climate change became a really important issue for me. And a lot of my passion for it also comes from like anger and sadness, because it's also a really depressing issue. It's so big and it can feel really hopeless at times as well. But I found that one of the most, I don't know, I would say like cathartic ways to release that anger and also feel like you're making a difference is through striking and activism, because it makes you feel like really powerful. It makes you feel like you can do anything and that you're not alone, because other people also care about this really huge issue. I went to a Boston climate strike like 2 years ago. It was December 20th at the Massachusetts State House. And through that strike, I learned of a sunrise movement training. It was a 4-day summit in DC, so I went. And it was amazing because I met so many new people from all over the country, and they were also young high school, even like middle school students who also all felt so passionate about stopping climate change. And so after that, it's just really empowering. So I came back to Watertown and I co-founded a Sunrise Movement Hub in Watertown. So I would just say that really like just going out there and striking can be a really good way to release that passion.
That is amazing. Yeah, that sometimes issues feel so big, and just get in there and take the action and strike and meet other people. And I think that is so true. I love it. Tara?
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to echo so much of what everybody else has said. I mean, everybody's insights have been so excellent as to how you meet yourself where you're at and take that and turn that into action that pushes your limits and what you're comfortable with and puts you into an avenue where you can learn. So for me, turning passion into action is really two things. It's first, learning, and second, recognizing yourself as somebody that is empowered and powerful enough to get involved. So every work experience I've had, all of the school that I've been to, that's all been about learning more about issues that I'm passionate about, understanding that there are people who know more than me, have more direct experiences than me, and I can learn from the work that they've done while inputting sort of the things that I learn about different issues. The second part of this is recognizing myself as a person that's worthy of getting involved. It can feel really intimidating. Even the people that I'm on the panel with tonight are incredible advocates at such a young age. It can be like, how can I get involved? How can I do this? But recognizing that you in your own life experience have been directly impacted by the things that you may be passionate about, and recognizing that in itself is a value, is such an invitation to get involved, to find people who are doing the work and just volunteer and find any way to sign up, to register, to do whatever you need to do to start learning about how to turn that passion into action.
That's excellent. Invitation to get involved and to push yourself to keep learning. Thanks. Whitney?
Yeah, so I think my story is similar to many people that got involved in 2016, but I really felt this decision to turn my passion into action after that election. I was tired of saying to myself all the time, I want change, not doing anything about it. So I started applying for jobs, and I got the amazing opportunity to work for the YWCA Cambridge, which Meg mentioned was on a mission to eliminate racism and empower women, which was really just like where I needed to be to keep this passion going. From there, I dove really deep into my racial equity work professionally and personally. I started looking within and doing a lot of internal racial justice work and bias work. I grew up in Wallingford, Connecticut, where I live now, and it was a very white town, and it still is a very white town. And I grew up being told, let's be colorblind. And so I had a lot to unpack and a lot of work to do. From there, doing all of that work really sent me into this, what Bree mentioned, that passion turned into like a fire, and I felt like I was going to explode and I needed to do more. So through the YWCA, I learned about Emerge Massachusetts, which helps Democratic women learn to run for office. I applied for their signature training program. I did a 6-month run for office training, which taught me logistics, fundraising, campaign planning, and so much more. It's actually where I met Meg. And Emerge just drove me, I was so inspired by the women I was around every day. You just are in a room of all this passion. You just continue to be even more passionate. So Emerge actually drove me. Remember sitting in the class and I said, I think if I really want to turn my passion into action, I need to move home to Connecticut. So this year I moved home and I'm currently exploring an exploratory campaign for town council. So I guess that's kind of like my journey.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Whitney, for that. And thank you everyone for sharing your stories. I think it's very inspiring for me. I know it is for Pamela as well. And for everyone watching to really hear how you all came to where you're at and everything that you're accomplishing at such a young age. And I also want to thank, we've got a live audience here. We've got a lot of folks watching us tonight. So thank you so much for that. And Lynn had a comment just to thank you. I think it was Brianna who was talking about talking at public comment periods. Oh, I'm sorry, Whitney. It was Whitney. Not only can you talk to the people in power, they usually want to hear from people. And I can second that. I've talked to a lot of representatives who say, I voted that way because that's who I heard from. That's what I heard people say they wanted. And so if we're being silent, then our reps don't really know what we want. So, okay, so let me pull up our next question. We've got a great question here. And this question is really about how to overcome what feels like almost insurmountable challenges right now in this environment. So sometimes it feels really hard for people to get started, especially in a world where many of these topics we've brought up tonight feel really divisive. What advice do you have for youth and just really anyone in general figuring out how they can be assertive and effective and how they can help build coalitions and bring people along with them? What advice would you have for that? And we're going to switch our order. So Whitney, you get to go first this time. I'm going to pull you on up for this.
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm having situations of where to be assertive and how to be effective. And I think for me, it's do your research and take the time to do your research so you know what you're talking about and you feel confident in what you're talking about. But it's also super important to know that you can say, I need to look into that, or I need to do more research on that, which is also gives you a chance to really sit down and figure out how you want to talk about something with people. But for me, I think also in terms of how to be assertive and effective, it's just keep having the conversations, sometimes having difficult conversations with family and friends and, even people in the political sphere, social media, everywhere. It can be hard and you can hear things that kind of drive you crazy. And you're like, I don't know how to even unpack all of this. It's okay to take a step back and be like, I need to think about this for a little bit. And so I think it's just keep trying and keep trying to have those conversations. But I'm really big on just do your research and the more you know about the facts and the more you know, the more confident you will be.
Awesome. I love that. I think that's really a big piece of it because there are so many of those conversations that are really tough, but it's okay to step back and take your time. So I really love that. Thank you for that. All right, Tara, I think you're next if I can do my alphabet correctly.
Yep. So I just want to echo what was just said. Knowledge is power, and knowing what you're talking about is such a huge component of this. So having the information to back up what you're saying, whether that be your personal story or research that you've done, is really important. In addition to that, just practice putting yourself out there, practice taking those public speaking gigs, practice going in front of people who disagree with you, and know that inevitably there will be people who disagree with you, and just be prepared for that. You can't please everyone all the time. But yeah, it's just about putting yourself out there and making sure you sort of get the rhythm of what it's like to assert yourself and when to build consensus and when to draw strong boundaries. It's a learning process.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I how old am I? 36, 37 now. I'm still figuring this out. So don't ever feel like you're not doing the right thing because you haven't quite figured it out. So thank you for that. Okay, I think we've got Layla next.
Yeah, just definitely heavily agree with what others have said. I think especially as young people, I know that I've had to deal with people thinking I'm young, so maybe I don't understand a lot of these issues or like the political aspect of them. So yeah, I've learned along the way that the best thing to do is to always do your research and then just take the extra step to be like overly prepared to defend your points. Because I think it's so easy for people to like label us like if we mess up or we can't back our ideas up as like, you know, naive or unsophisticated. But you also need to understand that like sometimes no matter what you say or do, there are always going to be people who say those things. I also think that when you're talking to others about these issues that you're really passionate about, it's really important to relate to them, like ask what's important to them, and appeal to what they care about, because, you know, chances are if this is an issue that affects everyone, then you'll find some way of relating to them, and telling a story that really like resonates with them, and definitely echoing what others have said. A lot of it's also just stepping out of your comfort zone and talking to people who you normally wouldn't, or yeah.
I love that. I think the best piece of advice I ever got on my state Senate campaign was you're never, and Tara said this too, you're never going to please everybody. There's always going to be someone who disagrees with you. And once you can understand that, I think it really frees you up. So thank you, Layla, for that. That was great. Brianna?
So I would tell people to get a backbone. And I don't mean that in an aggressive way. I mean in terms of support. Reach out to an organization, a group you like, a friend with similar interests, a family member, or just, you know, someone or anyone that can support you and be your backbone, especially when you're getting started in all of this. So for me, I've had a hard time with phone banking in the past. And at this point, I've done it by myself. But at first, I always needed to do it with a friend because, you know, it was so intimidating calling people and telling them what I think and asking them to help or to vote for who I think they should vote for. And so it's the same thing with protests. You know, during college, I went to a good number of protests, and I always had a protest buddy who I would meet up with at the train station to go into Boston with. And I'm okay going to protests now alone, but I still reach out to people and ask them to come with me because it's really nice having other people around you that support you and believe in the same things as you, especially on divisive issues. So having a backbone is very important. And of course, you know, being educated about the topic, I think that's all excellent advice. But for me, some of the biggest things, like even going on a podcast like this tonight, you know, if this was even a year ago, I don't know if I would have said yes, just because I get nervous about things and you have to be out there and you have to be speaking to the public. And it's important to have people that can support you and be a backbone so that you can, eventually you'll build it yourself and you'll be able to go off and flourish. But that's what I think of because it gave me a level of confidence.
And you're getting some love from the audience, Brianna, as you're talking. So, okay. So Ariana, let me pull you up here. There you go.
Yeah. So, I think for me, being so young and having led a lot of movements and things like that through whether it's leading the walkout with my school or against the practices my school was facilitating, and just doing things like speaking at the March for Our Lives rally in front of hundreds of people, thousands of people, I'm sorry. Just experiencing so much. One thing I've always noticed in those spaces, there are a lot of people who are scared to make change. And there are like probably 1 to 2 people in every one of those spaces that actually care about what's going on. And what I mean by that is everyone can complain about everything, right? There are so many things that can be going wrong. You can be like, hey, I want to change this. I want to change. If you want to change, you need to have a plan in order to enact that change. And so that's one thing that I've noticed a lot, where a lot of people will say, oh, I want to sit here and change. I want this to be different. Okay, what about it do you want to be different? And so if you want to be leading these movements, if you want to really put your best foot forward, you need to have a plan in place. And echoing, having a backbone, because a lot of those things are not done by themselves. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, let's use the basics, but MLK and Malcolm X did not lead their movements on their own, period. Like, there had to be a whole streamline of people behind them. And there were many different people that were leading that movement, not just him. but that might be the one person that needed to be pushed to the front, that was comfortable enough at speaking in front of everybody. So also don't feel bad if you feel like you've had all these ideas and everything like that, and you're timid or hesitant about being the face of that. Not everybody that leads or organizes these things to the fullest extent or has majority of the ideas needs to be the face of a movement. So sharing that credit, because I feel like a lot of times in this not organizing work overall, there a lot of people's egos get in the way of, well, I had that idea, and well, I did this and I did that. When this is a community effort, those things do not get the community to a better place. Those things are only thought about of the individual, and this work is not individualized. This work is community work all together. Everybody's together in this, and it should never sit here and be, well, I did this and I did that. So there's that portion of it, but definitely plan when you want change, because there cannot be change without action. If I sat here and wanted to organize the walkout at my school, right? Just a prime example. And I didn't sit here and say, well, we need different demands. We need to make sure that we're doing this in an organized fashion, in a safe fashion. We need to make sure there's a plan in place, and an aftermath. Is there going to be a meeting afterwards, or whatever you may have with the administrators? If those are not things that you thought of, you're not ready to lead that movement yet. Other people might have that plan. So you need that backbone in order to help you alongside in whatever journey you're embarking, because it's a community. This is community work. This is not individualized work. And I think that's something that a lot of people get misconstrued, and you don't have to do everything on your own, because it's a lot harder to sit here and plan a big old movement if you're doing it all by yourself. Because if you're trying to sit here and speak in front of hundreds and thousands of people, right? And then you're just like, dang, I need a bottle of water, and I didn't think of that. Something so small as a bottle of water could help you to not choke up in front of those hundreds and thousands of people, right? You can't do this work by yourself. So always remember those things. Make sure you have a plan when you want to take a real foot in action, as well as making sure you know the people that you need to lean on in making those plans.
Okay, I love that. Thank you for that. And she's getting a lot of love in our private chat we've got here, and I know that the audience watching live totally agrees with this as well. I want to pop in here because we have incredible folks watching us tonight, and for everyone who is here live, we would love to know who you are, where you're from, what you're doing to turn your passion into action. And I also want to take some of your questions if we've got a little time. So I want to bring over this question here from Ashley Johnson, who asks, everyone's advocacy work is so inspiring. I'm curious what each of the panelists does to rejuvenate or recover so that you can keep that fire going and stay resilient for the long term. So I forget now the order we went in. Who went first last time? Was it Whitney? Okay, so we're going to switch it. So Ariana, it's you to go first here. Let me pull you back up.
Alrighty. So this question I take as, what do you do for self-care to continue on? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm probably the worst person to ask about self-care. I can tell you every way you should do self-care. For myself though, I'm still working on it. I will be completely honest about that. Even though, my age says a lot, but at the end of the day, I continuously push myself. So I guess when I do get to those points where I'm just like, geez, I need a break, I can't, I need to breathe. Some of those things that I do is definitely go get myself some ice cream. The little mini, I don't know what is there quarts or something like that, the little mini pints of ice cream. Definitely get yourself the mango sorbet from Haagen-Dazs, definitely great. So that's something that's small, minimal self-care, where it's just like I'm on the breaking point, and I need something to brighten my day. Some nice ice cream. And in the long run, in the long term, something that I used to not realize is that, like, making sure that you eat. And that sounds very, like, simple, but it can be very hard to remember. especially for people who do this work. And so it's definitely, that's another part of self-care, just making sure that little things like that, where you eat, you make sure that you have little parts in your day that you're looking forward to. You might have that ice cream in the freezer, right? You might have your journal and your brand new special pen waiting at home for you to just doodle with. Little things like that definitely do help me forget to eat. And lastly, my backbone. My backbone is definitely one of them. One of the main ones is my brother. He's amazing. He definitely is the first person to sit here and remind me, hey, go drink some water. You need to eat something. You need to breathe. You need to remember what you're doing. Because if you don't have those people, I have many other people that help me, my parents and things like that, who definitely do look out for me. And without those people, without those backbones, like we were just talking about, on top of the little things, little simple self-care things, you're not going to be able to pull through, because there have been moments where I've just been like dizzy just because I forgot to eat that day, because I was literally in a protest. I remember this one time I was in a protest all day, forgot to drink any water. I had water on me. Did I forget to drink it? Yes, indeed I did. Very faint, was like almost ready to pass out after speaking, like craziness. But you can't keep that fire going without little things like making sure you eat, making sure you drink some water, having somebody that reminds you to breathe. So definitely like the backbones and the little motivations of self-care, nice hot shower, little things, you know, and also just like consistent things, making sure to have a schedule of things that you do. So I make sure at least 2 to 3 times a week I'm painting, because I am in school right now. I am still doing, you know, my work in the community, and I am, you know, running a small business. And so with all of those things, I can't keep doing those things if I don't take a second to actually enjoy the things that I love to do. And so if I'm only making art to produce art for money, it's not making art. It's not something for me anymore. It's something for everybody else. You need those little things to be selfish about. And I think that that's something that's taboo, that isn't really.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to bring Brianna up. There you go. What do you do for self-care?
So I'd like to echo a lot of the things Ariana just said. I am not a good person to ask about self-care. I do have my little things. I have consistent things I do, and then I have like comfort things that sometimes I just need after a long day. I'm well known for burning the candle at both ends. I've always kept myself busy, had a busy schedule. I try to be engaged in everything. It's a big challenge to just say no sometimes. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, I've been burnt out before, and it's not a good place to be. I've had to turn off the news and social media and everything for just a whole month last year, when, you know, sometimes politics and everything just gets to be too much, no matter what you think or believe. And it's hard to get yourself back into a headspace where you can get back into it if you get to that point. So for me, you know, if I'm going out to protest, if I'm doing this and doing that, I have to come home and have my dumplings and my miso soup sometimes, you know, my comfort food. Every day I try to write down one positive thing that happened. So even if there's a lot of negativity going on in the news and what I'm working on, I have to think of something I'm grateful for, or something that's positive. And that's really important for keeping a good attitude and mental impact. I think sometimes too, you know, it is important to stop looking at social media and to turn off the news, to make a choice to do it for an hour or a day. That's very helpful for me. You know, we all have phones, and they're very addictive. And I just, sometimes I can't bother to pick it up. You know, I think that that's a level of mental care for myself. Not looking at my phone, being more present where I am, realizing that no matter what issues we're dealing with and we're trying to overcome, you know, you're present, you're here, everything's fine. And so you just have to breathe. I think a lot of breathing too. So that's what I would say. Long term, you have to really get to learn more about yourself and make sure you're managing yourself too, and don't let yourself get to a point of burnout.
I love that. It's just, this is also, I'm taking notes over here because I need to know this stuff. So, all right, let's see. We've got Layla next. Let me pull Layla up here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Burnout is a huge thing. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's like I need to remember that this stuff shouldn't be taking over my life. And it's not like my whole responsibility to fix the whole entire problem of like, I don't know, climate change. That's not my whole job. Especially during quarantine, a lot of my organizing happened on the computer. So when I'm like feeling kind of burned out, I like to get off the computer, go on picnics with my friends, and then maybe just taking like a day or a couple days to remember that this isn't my life. I can take some time to myself to rejuvenate. I was recently talking to a classmate who reminded me that it's not our job to solve the whole issue because that's impossible, and it's going to take so many people and so many events to do all of this work. And then another thing is that, sometimes like I don't always have to like organize every event or always be leading every strike. Sometimes it's very calming to just like attend as a member. I like to take photos with my SLR 35mm camera at strikes. And developing that film is really satisfying to see how the film comes out. I like to relax. I like to lay on my trampoline. I have, long FaceTime calls with my friends. Recently been watching a lot of H2O, Just Add Water. It's my comfort show in quarantine, 10 out of 10, would recommend. I also think it's a really great thing for like activists or other organizers to do for self-care is to do some listening partnerships, which is a big thing that we do in Uplift Watertown, where you're basically talking one-on-one with another organizer. And it's really helpful because it's somebody else who understands what you're going through or understands what you've been thinking about because they've also been doing a lot of the same work. And it's sometimes easier to talk to those people instead of people who are outside of this work, who may not understand a lot of the same feelings. So yeah, one-on-one's great self-care.
I love it. I love it. All right, Tara, you're up.
Yeah, so I want to start this answer by acknowledging that as much as we want to set boundaries, sometimes there are things we can't turn off or walk away from. Our identities are our own, and sometimes those identities in and of themselves are political. So it can be hard to set those boundaries and walk away from who you are and this passion that you have and this advocacy that you're working on. I'll say for me, self-care is very much about embedding things into my routine to make sure I have a baseline level of health and wellness, because it does a disservice, and knowing it does a disservice to other people if I fail to take care of myself. So this was most acute for me when I was working in legal aid and had clients that I worked with every day who had a lot of stuff going on in their own lives, and knowing that in order to fully serve them and their needs and to represent them fully, I couldn't be doing that if I was worn down and impatient and feeling that level of burnout. So things like working out, mindfulness and meditation, going to therapy if that is something in your practice, and building up, being very vigilant about maintaining hobbies and things that you can walk away and do other things and work other parts of your brain that you don't always get to work. Those are the things that are really important for me.
I love that. I just had like an anxiety moment because I forgot my order. I don't know why this is so tough for me, y'all. I know, Whitney, I figured it out, but then I was like, oh no. All right, Miss Whitney, you're up.
Yeah, so for me, I do want to also point out that COVID has made it so hard to like turn off and to like step away from things. So I really challenge people to like try your best to take a step away from social media at a certain hour of the night from technology. I do not do that myself, but I think it's super important. It's something I'm also really trying to work on. But honestly, I have to say, like, my self-care is all of the Real Housewives. It's like the one thing that I can like really just turn on and like turn my brain off and like kind of laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. And then on top of that, reading, going to the bookstore, things like that. I think it's like finding finding that one thing that helps you turn your brain off and just take a break is so important. Going for walks and really just like focusing on, you for at least 30 minutes a day.
Awesome. So many good ideas there. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. And so our civic duties, and think about getting involved, understanding civics, civic duty to vote. So maybe we can go around, and how do you recommend people kind of get comfortable with the civic processes? And how do they make their voices heard? And we're going to switch up the order a little bit here. We're going to start with Layla.
Okay, cool. I think what I found to be really helpful is just starting with like attending town council meetings. Even if you're not going to speak, you can get a really good general idea or just like a feel for the vibes just by listening. Yeah, and honestly, like a lot of people I've worked with realize that a lot of the time these local meetings are pretty laid back, and there's usually time for the public to ask questions or send emails in. Another great way to get involved is to reach out to local representatives, like one-on-one, whether it's a town councilor or a state representative. So last summer, some fellow Sunrise members and I met with Senator Brownsberger a couple times after we wrote him a letter about Massachusetts climate policy. He was super generous and he spent time answering our questions. And it's also really great for your representatives to hear from you because they also have a lot of issues to deal with. But if you're like constantly showing up to meetings, making your voice heard, contacting them, then you have a better chance to push them to prioritize a certain issue or a piece of legislation. I'll also add on that, like as young people, a lot of people that I work with have no real like voice or power in politics because we can't vote. I can't vote. And I've even had a town councilor tell me that like they don't really take into consideration the opinions of those who can't vote because we're not like real people, which can be a little sad, but it's still like a really great way to influence elections, is to go out into town, hold signs into the center of town. A lot of cars will see you, you'll get beeps, and then doing a ton of phone banking. Even if it's just friend banking, talking to people who you know in the community, or just like talking to random people all over the country. I did this for the Biden-Harris campaign, as well as the re-election of Senator Markey. And honestly, like it helped me use my voice more in politics. I was really scared the first few times I did phone banking. My voice was like shaking. But then like the third time you get more into it, you remember the policies that you want to hit on. So I think phone banking is a really great way for young people to specifically get involved.
Awesome. Awesome. Brianna?
Sure. So I think for me, when I was a regular person, which I still believe I am, I go into spaces thinking no one knows what they're doing. And of course, there are experts in certain things, and you can and should always turn to people who know more about a particular subject to ask your questions, get advice or guidance. But no one knows everything. And I believe when you're young or completely new to a subject, you actually have a more open perspective to learning. And that's why we see so many young people that are much more in tune with new concepts or scientific discoveries. There's a faster adaptation and comprehension of what's socially acceptable and a passion for making change happen in places where it's hard to believe that change hasn't already happened. I think when I was first coming into the sphere of politics and global understanding, it was hard for me to grasp why global problems have been allowed to exist for so long, because viable solutions exist. So I'd be asking myself, why hasn't anyone fixed this problem, like food insecurity or global poverty? And you learn over time that, on top of these being super complex, interconnected issues, there's political barriers, agendas, money, financing. It all gets in the way of making good change happen. And so I think the most important thing people can do when they want to get started with civic processes and making their voices heard is just to start speaking. Say what you believe and say what you want to say. And if you're wrong, somebody's going to tell you. And you can learn from that and be right next time. Walk away with more knowledge than you expected. There's a reason on-the-job experience is so important. Nobody knows everything. And so you figure stuff out as you go and walk into spaces with, I guess this is going along things that have already been echoed in the podcast, walk into spaces with the confidence that, nobody knows everything. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all figuring it out as we go. So that's how I suggest everybody gets involved. Just go in and try it, say something. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. That's okay.
I love it. The openness and the confidence. So true. Tara?
Sure. So I guess for this question, I'll sort of put on my state house hat and speak from the perspective of being a legislative director for a state senator. In that role, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people don't reach out, don't know who we are, don't contact us. So that would be a huge step forward, is just send an email if something is bothering you, if you want to see something that's different. Even if you don't have a perfect solution or you don't have the perfectly crafted argument, a one-sentence email saying, I saw this bill, I support it, or my childcare is too expensive. I feel like you guys should be doing something about it. That's definitely something you want to highlight, because we're always thinking about, okay, what should the senator's priorities be and how could these be reflected in the emails or calls that we get every day? So that's huge. Another part of it is just, volunteering, going to put yourself out there, signing up for things that you might not think that you're quote unquote qualified for, and just, get involved that way. As other people have noted, the first time you do something, you're really nervous, you feel kind of anxious about it, but then over time it just gets better. Get used to that feeling. I mean, that's totally normal. And then also I'm going to put in a plug for Beacon BLOC, BLOC spelled BLOC. If you're part of an organization or a group that needs a training on the budget process or the legislative process, we do a ton of trainings on that and would be happy to give you a timeline of how all these things work, because it can be complicated. That's sort of how it was built. So we're trying to build transparency in the legislative and budget process.
That's great. Ariana?
Yeah, so I love how everyone took like the good answers, the answers that I thought of. You guys are so amazing. So I think that, I guess, regular people, people who are not typically engaged in activism, social justice work, and whatever you may have it, I would definitely say, one, make sure you do your research. I know that was something we brought up in one of the questions. Make sure you do your research. Make sure that you know what you're talking about. Make sure that you are comfortable enough to educate somebody else on what you're thinking about, right? So do your research, read up on stuff, ask people that you know that are involved with civic processes. More than likely, you know somebody. You might not realize it, but I promise you most likely do. A lot of people don't always talk about it or share their work and things like that, but there are a lot of people there doing that. So definitely do your research. And on top of that, look out for different opportunities. So sometimes your voice it doesn't need to actually be your voice if you're not comfortable yet, right? But you might still want to do something, whether that's donating to different organizations, different people that are in need in the community, different small things like that, or even different campaigns if you are really passionate about one organizer and things like that. Just making sure that you know what you're talking about, you know what you're advocating for, you know what causes that you are passionate about when it comes to this, or even just putting 12 different hats on and being like, well, I love all these things. And I really do want to look into all of them. So just thinking about things like that and doing your best to look out for different opportunities, whether it's maybe you like to write, maybe you do poetry or something like that. And you want to sit here and, there are different open mic spaces, or you want to use a different form of art, and really create pieces off of activism like I do. You're able to do that as well, or even just speaking to different organizations and things like that you know around your community that does work in this. I know that I currently, like in my bio, I'm working with Boston Community Action Team, BCAT, OIU, Gang Votes, many different names for us, and we do civic engagement work. And we, at any moment, if somebody sat here and commented on our Instagram or anything like that, hey, I would like to learn more, we would be glad to sit here and engage people on civic engagement, things happening around Boston and the elections and things like that. So just finding different things, different organizations around you, and different people who are involved with civic engagement matters, to really educate yourself, because a lot of the times it's better to be educated from a specific person than just reading on things. But it also, if you want to just read on things, it helps you build your own consensus of the way that you want to pursue this work or hear and have your voice heard.
I love that so much. Thank you, everyone, so much for that question. It's just so great to hear all of your different perspectives. And believe it or not, we are actually almost up on our hour. So we are going to take one final question. And this is actually going to be a question from the audience. We're going to do this rapid fire since we're running out of time here. So to my panelists, like, get ready. I want your amazing answers. This question comes from Pendary, and she says, as you've all transitioned to new schools, jobs, etc., and you will again, how did you train and groom other leaders who could carry the mission forward after you personally moved to a new role? So, okay, rapid fire, and I should have figured out an order, but I think we're going to start with Whitney since she didn't get to go last time. So Whitney, you are up, my friend.
Yeah, so a few things. One, I would say when I was at Southern New Hampshire University, we had a community service office, and I'm so sorry, the dogs are barking, but so we had a community service office, and as the new students came in, you kind of like, it was just like unspoken to like be each other's mentors and like mentor the new students that came in. So I think it's like being a mentor for other people, answering questions, taking that extra time to like listen to somebody and like answer, talk about a social justice issue that's important to them. But for me, it's like, I haven't had a mentor at YWCA Cambridge. I'm a Martin Blyther, former executive director, and like, having that type of mentor has inspired me to continue to be a mentor for other people. And so that's what I would say.
All right, a couple of things. First, be a teacher in whatever room that you're in. Make sure to bring in junior people to you and to prioritize educating them. And three, like everybody on this podcast is doing, go into spaces where you can educate from what you know, as you are a constant learner yourself.
Okay, I'm currently going through this as I'm leaving high school. So I think it's all about, first of all, just finding the person who you know is really passionate about this, that person who you can see they have the energy and the excitement to carry it on. And then I know I've said this before, but I think one-on-one conversations are so important. Giving them projects to take on slowly so that there's a really gradual transition. And then, I feel like this is also a great idea. Maybe being like, okay, we're going to take 6 hours for this one day, put it in your calendar. We're going to go to this field and we're all going to meet and go through this short training. I want you to know this, this, and this about sunrise and about movement theory. And we're going to do some great bonding time just so people feel like empowered to carry it on and like they know what they're doing.
Love it. Okay, hold on. I got to go down here. Brianna.
Okay, just everything everyone's already said, and be a charismatic leader that people want to resemble, and that people want, not resemble, but people want to be in leadership roles because of the work that you've done, or try to be someone that can motivate other people to take on that leadership.
Beautiful. All right, Ariana, last but not least.
I would definitely say, if you know this transition is coming up, definitely plan ahead. That's something I just transitioned from associate program coordinator role, handing off my role to another amazing leader in the community, and making sure that you have a plan set in place and seeing that that person is able to be successful in that role. You don't need to rush through anything. Honestly, I know I'm speaking fast because I'm rushing through something, but you don't need to rush through anything necessarily. Just make sure that as long as you have a mapped out plan and things flow generally smoothly, they will continue to flow smoothly, and that person will be able to step up in that role in a way that's very productive and reasonable.
Perfect. And thank you so much. Hold on, let me bring Pamela back here for a second. So I'm going to turn it over to Pamela in a second for our closing remarks. But before I do, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists. We're going to give them one last chance to just hop on and do a call to action for all of you out there. But I just want to thank all of them so much for being a part of this. This has been an incredible conversation. And thank you everyone who's watching live. These are the types of conversations we have on the Elected podcast. And so I would be honored if you would head on over to your favorite podcast player and subscribe to the Elected podcast, or check us out at electedpodcast.com. And with that, Pamela, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we will give our panelists a final few minutes to say goodbye, and we'll wrap it up.
Well, so first of all, just a huge thank you to all of our panelists. This has been amazing. You all inspire me and give me chills hearing your answers. And thank you so much to Meg and the Elected podcast for having us on here. Hope you'll subscribe to Elected Podcast, to Junior League of Boston, and stay tuned for more Mass Civic Learning Week events. Tomorrow night, we actually have Let Your Voice Be Heard, a guide to get started in advocacy with Junior League of Boston. So I hope you'll join us for that event, and just a huge shout out to everyone who's made this possible. Thank you so much, and we couldn't have done it without the whole team here, the advocacy team, Junior League, and thank you so much for the Mass Civic Learning Coalition. And right there we have a link to take a survey on this. So thank you so much.
And we'll go ahead and drop that link in the comments, because I know it's kind of a long link, so we'll do that afterwards. But I want to bring our panelists on one more time to just do kind of a final, any final words, any calls to action you want to do. And we're going to flip our order again. So hold on, Pamela, I'm going to take you off there. Ariana, you are going to be first, my friend. I'm going to bring you back up here. Any final words?
I just want to say thank you everybody for just listening to us today. Definitely check out Teen Empowerment, the Center for Teen Empowerment. That's where my whole journey started. Also check out the Boston Community Action Team, our Instagram page. We also have a podcast that has a few episodes. So that's at BCATXTE, BCAT at XTE. So definitely check us out. And if you are interested in looking at any of my art or anything like that, definitely send me a DM, a constant P on Instagram. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes as well for this episode. All right. So next we've got Brianna.
I'm so glad I got to come on tonight and hear all the panelists speak. I think you're all incredible. So I just want to say to everyone, if you want to take action, you need to keep this conversation going. Make a list right now, get a piece of paper and a pen, and write down a brainstorm of what you're passionate about, anything that comes to mind. And then afterwards, look at your list and do a search of groups and organizations that focus on at least one of those things. Protests and virtual events going on that talk about it. Look at jobs that specialize in it. See if you can take a class on it. Call a friend and have a conversation about it. The biggest thing is don't let yourself be bogged down or intimidated or dissuaded from doing what you love and seeing the changes in the world that you want to see. I hope I didn't plagiarize Gandhi. I hope that everyone gets to pursue what they're passionate about. And in terms of civics and action, we should each be pursuing what we want as a world for ourselves and others. So be a leader for your community, for yourself, your country, your town, your friends and family. Do it.
Love that. Thank you so much for that. All right, Layla, you are up next.
Okay, echoing a bit, Brianna, what they said. I think it's so easy to be passive or just like post on social media, but I think anybody can put in the effort to take that extra step and take opportunities. And if you feel passionate or strongly about an issue, like look more into what's being done, what you'd like to see get done, and look into if there's any organizations near you already doing the work. Get in contact with them if there's any actions happening. Anybody already doing the work on the ground, organizing strikes. Just go, like put yourself out there, take opportunities. And then, also research who represents you and what their policies are. Make sure you know what people are doing about these issues and where they stand, because even if you don't want to get involved in politics, it's so important to hold those who represent us accountable and pressure them to prioritize issues such as like the climate crisis or racial justice. And yeah, thank you for having me. Everybody here is so amazing.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, Tara.
Well, big thank you to Meg and Pamela for having me on, and thank you to the other panelists for really rejuvenating and re-energizing me with all the energy that you brought tonight. The final thing that I will say is, get involved. Figure out a way to participate. If you need an invitation to get involved, consider this right now, me asking and inviting you to participate in civics and civic engagement in the political process. Massachusetts, right now, we're in the middle of our budget process. Senate debate starts in 2 weeks. Look up who your rep and senator are and send them an email with what your priorities are. It doesn't have to be pretty. It can have typos. Just get the email out there. Go volunteer. Go follow Beacon BLOC, BLOC, on Twitter, on Instagram, and get engaged with the material, the incredible material that they put out to make sure that that Beacon Hill is as transparent as it could be at its current stage. Thank you.
I love that so much. All right, and last but not least, Whitney.
So I could say a ton of different things, but I would say get involved with Emerge in your state. They help Democratic women run for office, and there's over 20 different states involved. So there's one in Massachusetts, there's one in Connecticut. It's a really great program that helps you feel like you have the confidence to run, and you will have the confidence to run because they give you all the steps to do so. And then also there's so many coalitions and ways that you can really start like getting your feet wet and activism. If there's a certain social issue that you're passionate about, look up coalitions in your area that are doing work and doing public policy around that and see how you can help. Use your skills. If you're into graphic design, help with that. If you know social media, help with that. If you're a TikTok star, do that. Things like that. Wherever your passion is, like using art, using writing. There's so many ways to get involved. And it's start now, and don't be afraid. It's not that scary.
I love that so much. And I'm going to bring Pamela back. Thank you all so much. Of course, now you can't see my face. That doesn't matter. No one needs to see me. Thank you all so much for being here for another incredible episode of the Elected Podcast. Have a great night, y'all.